When I was in a coma, I had a feeding tube put down my throat to feed me, right? Because I wasn't able to eat food, and I would rip it out. Or I don't know if I was in a coma or outside the coma, but I was ripping it out. And it got to the point where I'd rip it out maybe 3, 4 times. I put mittens around my hands, so I couldn't rip it out anymore. But I'd worked up this for hours and days to get my hands free, and then eventually I'd rip it out and rip out this cord. They put it back down. They'd have to X-ray me to make sure it was in my stomach and not my lungs, and they'd continue feeding me again. But that was my first memory from like the hospital. Was that kind of no man's land between the living and the dying. But I woke up from the coma to see my mom, dad, and brother around the bed. And I'm trying to speak, but I can't talk because I had a tracheotomy removed and I had my voice box hadn't come back yet. So I point at my brother and I go, "You, get me a pen and paper, please." And I write in the pen and paper, I go, "Get me out of here." And I show it to him and I go, "Yeah, make this happen, please." And he's going, "Yeah, but what do you want me to do? You're not going anywhere." Like I was in the hospital for months after this, but I was thinking, in London, like this may not be covered. Like this is expensive. Let's get out of here while we can. I couldn't walk at this stage. I couldn't talk. I was going nowhere. So that's the first abrupt memory I had of coming back from a unconscious state and meeting my mom, brother, and dad for the first time in a few months, or at least a month or so.
I see. So you were saying that you were in that state for months. So you obviously got to a point you were recovering after a few months, and then you kind of moved on to the next stage of your recovery, which is documented that you were in a facility to kind of learn how to walk again. Was that kind of the next stage there? And maybe you can just tell us a little about how you got to that part.
Yeah, well, I was in the ICU for a little while in Charing Cross, and then I moved to the regular ward. And then eventually I made my way to Wolfson Rehab Center after about 3 months from the initial brain hemorrhage. So at the Wolfson Rehab Center to learn how to walk again. So I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair for the first 3, 4 months because my leg had atrophied at an angle when I was in a coma. So to gently stretch out my leg, which was, well, nothing really gentle about it, Ben. It was quite painful. I wore a splint over my left leg. And the splint was supposed to gently tease out the muscle to get me back to like flexibility range. Now, the first night I wore the splint through the night, no issue, no stress. This will be easy. I thought this will be easy. The second night, after 20 minutes, it was painful. After 30 minutes, it was dreadful. After 40 minutes, it's unbearable. I buzz the nurses, "We got to take this off my leg. I can't deal with the pain." They take it off, but I tell her, tomorrow we're doing this for an hour. We're doing this for an hour, right? So I'm like, I'm gung ho. We're going to do this for an hour. I'm a walker. I can handle this. I thought that I can handle the pain. The next night, they wrap up my leg. They give me the clicker, the nurse call button. They go from the control to Wilson ward. Now, the Wilson ward was an L shape, so short on this side, longer on this side, okay? Short on this side, longer on this side. And they leave me in that hospital room that smells like only a hospital room can smell. Sterilized, sanitized. It's clean, but you're wondering what sort of sins have you covering up for with your scent? After 10 minutes, the leg's painful. After 20 minutes, the leg's dreadful. After 30 minutes, the leg is unbearable. It's like a rat's nest has been descending on my leg and it's expanding in pain every few minutes. I start passing the clicker back and forth, trying to distract myself from the pain. The clicker's how I call the nurses, right? My lifeline to like humanity. I've got double vision from the first brain injury, Ben, which means I see 2U. She's I see 2 this clicker. I'm passing this back and forth. As the pain ratchets up, my throats get more enthusiastic. So eventually, I drop the clicker and it lands on the hard linoleum floor. I look over the edge of the bed. I see the clicker there lying on the floor looking back at me. If I can only get to that clicker, I can stop this pain, right? Only problem was the clicker was 3.5 feet down on hard linoleum, which I thought was about a 50-50 chance of me breaking my arm if I dropped down and grabbed it. A coin flip, not the best odds. So I changed tack. I'm reaching at my splint, trying to undo it, but it's up at the ankle, not at the hip. I can't reach that far. I'm not that flexible. I'm yelling in the word, "Help! Help!" But the word was a wolf and was an L shape, right? Short on this side, long on this side. Short on this side, long on this side. They're the far end of the ward. They can't hear me yelling for help. I decided I'm going to drop down and grab the clicker because that's my number one problem right now is a splint on my leg. I can't bear another minute with a splint. I'm willing to risk the arm breaking to get the splint off my leg. So I lower myself off the edge of the bed and I crash down to heap at the yard sale, blankets, wires, cables, it's all a go. It's all a go, man. The arm holds and I hammer the clicker, expecting the nurses to come bursting in the room to come to my rescue. They kind of stroll in 5 minutes later. What are you doing on the floor, love? It's my attempt at a very poor British accent, excuse me. I tell them, let's not worry about that. Let's get the splint off my leg, please. I'll tell you all about it. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters, right? The reason why I'm telling that story is I learned 3 lessons from this experience, Ben. The first and probably most important was let's not pass the clicker back and forth. It's a pretty self-evident one. Sometimes I gotta touch the stove to know if it's hot. The second one was let's always do the splint tip at the hip, not at the ankle. That way I can undo this should this happen going forwards. And the third and probably most profound learning I've had from this experience is let's always, from this moment forwards, be solutions oriented. Focus on how you can resolve your issue, not what your issue is. Focus on how you can fix your issue, not what your issue is. How do I fix my issue? I get the clicker. How can I get the clicker? You got to drop down and get the clicker. And with everything in life now, it's solutions-oriented, solutions-based thinking. I'm not worried what the problem is. How can I fix it? And then afterwards, I look back to figure out how to avoid this going forwards.